Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, July 31st, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. Well, again, we have a number of very interesting celebrations today. We'll start off with the Abbot Orsini, who tells us they celebrate Nossa Senhora, or Our Lady of the Slain, in Cesa, in Lorban, in Portugal. It's the chapel of the Cistercian monastery. So we are told that this image was brought forth from heaven to the abbot John, uncle of King Alphonsus, and then restored to life several persons who had been murdered. That in memory of this miracle, they had from that time on a red mark on their throats, like that which is seen at present on the throat of the image. In Octolan, in Tlaxcala, in Mexico, they celebrated the canonical coronation of Nuestra Señora de Ocotlan. Difficult there. In Corogne, in Turin, they celebrate Madonna di Rivasolo, which is today was the solemn incoronation, the coronation, which took place in 1836 through the hands of Bishop Ciavarotto, the Archbishop of Turin. And last but not least, they also celebrate Our Lady of Verdelais in New Aquitaine, France. Okay, so what's the story here? In 1099, during the First Crusade, Gerard de Grasse was riding towards Bethlehem with 60 knights, when all of a sudden, out of the blue, they were confronted with 1,500 Muslims, 1,500 Muslims. His men began to flee, and so de Graves prayed to Our Lady, promising to build her a chapel if he won. He orders his reluctant crusaders to turn and face their astonished foes, and they succeeded. 3 years later, de Graves returned to Aquitaine with a statue of the Virgin and built a chapel for Our Lady of Luc near the forest hermitages, where he stayed until his death in 1159. Such was the story perpetuated by the next owners of the property, the monks of Grandmont, whose sanctuary to the Virgin became an object of pilgrimage after a blind youth regained sight in 1185. Right? G. Levin suggests that de Graves had the statue carved in Bethlehem, and that the name Luc derived from the old name of the territory near Verdelais, but it's possibly that the name came about because the statue's devotees believed it was an original work by St. Luke, or a copy of a work by St. Luke brought from the Holy Land. During the 100 Years' War and the Anglo-French War of 1294 through 1303, preceding it, the monastery and the chapel were destroyed. In 1390, when Countess Isabelle de Foix asked for a sign as to where she should build a church in thanksgiving for her sons, her mule stumbled on a stone. It turned out to be hiding a buried statue of the Virgin and Child, believed to be that image, Our Lady of Luc, hidden from the English in 1295. During the French Revolution, the sanctuary was again destroyed, but the statue was saved. With the return of the monarchy, Marist fathers rebuilt the church, which was rededicated, you guessed it, on July 31st, 1824, to the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin. The statue was solemnly crowned on June 2nd, 1856. On February 1st, 1924, the Pope made the church a minor basilica. It's an honor celebrated on July 31st of each year. Now, the statue of Chinquapin wood has been dated to around 1300s, right? So it may be the one that the Countess de Foix uncovered, but probably didn't come from the Holy Land in 1102 or presided over healing in 1185, right? They figured that maybe the original was destroyed along with the monastery in 1270, and they substituted another one for it. But in any event, it's a very beautiful, beautiful image and a beautiful tradition. And that's what we're celebrating today in the Marian world on July 31st. For today's Marian meditation, taken from the book by Father Ildefonso Villar, we continue with meditation 92, entitled Mother Omnipotent, and now we read the concluding half of the first point, entitled All Powerful. The Holy Fathers of the Church have said admirable things about this all-powerfulness of Mary. O Virgin, all that God can do through his omnipotence, you can also do through your prayer. St. Antoninus said that the prayer of the Mother of God is for all practical purposes a command. It cannot but be heard. St. Peter Damian writes, O Mary, when you approach the golden altar of pardon, it isn't to beseech, but as a queen to command, since all the treasures of God's mercy lie in your hands. St. Bonaventure goes so far as to say, no one enters heaven except through Mary.
The great Saint Bernard advises us, "Have recourse to Mary. I tell you without hesitation she is always heard on account of her dignity. The angel told her that she had found grace, and in fact Mary always finds grace." Finally, these words of Saint Bernardine of Siena are very well known. The command of Mary is obeyed by the whole world, even by God himself. Let Mary will anything, and it will be done. God's submission and obedience to his creature, is really sublime, but not less sublime is her dignity, being placed in such heights that she can issue orders in heaven. The rights and the love of a mother. These are the foundations of her omnipotence. A mother has the right to issue orders to her son. The son has the duty to obey her. A mother tenderly loves her son. A good son cannot but love his mother, and consequently be always ready to please her in everything. Just apply this simple rule to Mary and her divine child to see why Our Lady must be practically all-powerful. For today's reading from The Admirable Heart of Mary by St. John Eudes, we start chapter 13, wherein the saint comments on the Magnificat, and in particular on the phrase, "He hath received Israel his servant." Almighty God fashioned two orders of creatures at the beginning of the world, angels and men. The angels in heaven, men on earth. Both of them were so ungrateful that they revolted against their Creator, the angel through pride, and man through disobedience to the commandment of God. The sin of the angel, being a sin of pride, was found to be so enormous in the eyes of God that divine justice obliged him to drive out the angelic sinner out of paradise and cast him into hell. But his mercy, seeing that man had fallen into sin through the temptation and seduction of Satan, took pity on him, and resolved to withdraw him from the miserable state to which he had been reduced, even making a pledge to that effect. And even the countless and enormous sins committed by the Jews, the Gentiles, and all men since that promise, were not capable of preventing its fulfillment. But they did delay it for many centuries, during which time the whole race of Adam, condemned and cast out by God, was plunged into an abyss of darkness and a whirlpool of inexplicable evils, from which it was impossible for it to emerge unaided. The more humanity went forward, the more deeply mired it became in this gulf, the more it wallowed in the mud and filth of its sins. God was known only in Judah, and even there he was known very imperfectly and by very few persons. All the others were enshrouded in the darkness of hell. The whole world was covered with idols and idolaters, and the tyranny of Satan oppressed the whole world. The law of Moses revealed sin, but it did not cure it. Thus it seemed that God, by an eminently just judgment, had entirely forgotten mankind, abandoned in this deplorable state as a punishment for its crimes. His mercy did not manifest itself. There was evidence only of the terrible signs of his wrath, which had cast 1/3 of the angels into hell, had engulfed the whole army to be swallowed up in the waters of the Red Sea, had rained torrents of fire and flames from heaven to reduce great cities to ashes, had delivered his people on several occasions to the fury of their enemies, and had allowed men to suffer many other fearful punishments.
Hello, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to our Marian podcast. In the spirit of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, we say to you that there is no greater delight than to spread the devotion of Our Lady. We hope you share these sentiments and encourage you greatly to share with a loved one. Know that you are always in our prayers, and we ask that you keep us in yours. God bless.